Hi, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're viewing from. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I've said it again, evening or morning. We're going to be discussing today accreditation, what it means in the sector, in the serviced accommodation, the service department sector, and perhaps also touching on other sectors, why operators need accreditation, the importance of accreditation to guests, and what accreditation broadly entails. We'll be touching on verification, regulation, and licensing as well, trying to explain the difference perhaps. And hopefully by the end, within an hour, you'll be a lot wiser. I'm sure I will be. I'd like to encourage viewers to interact with us, please. Comments, questions, please do post them, and please send the link that you are viewing on at the moment. Please send that to colleagues and let them join us. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll be introducing the panel, alphabetical order by first name. When the panel are on the screen, then they will spend a little time introducing themselves and their companies, and then we'll go into some questions regarding accreditation, and we will hopefully be able to I will hopefully be able to multitask. That's a big question, and field some of your comments and questions as we go through. So without further ado, I would like to add so Deborah Heather from Quality in Tourism. Welcome, Deborah. Merrily Carr, Under the Doormat, and STAA. Sarah White from Quality in Tourism. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
And Toby Roberts from Silverdor. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for taking part in this discussion. Such an important discussion that I can't really stress enough, but I'm sure you will be able to help me. So, Deborah, if I could hand over the mic to you, please, first of all, to introduce yourself and your company, and then perhaps then once you've finished, then you hand it over to Merrily and Sarah, and then Toby as we go through. So over to you, Deborah.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me here. Good to see you all, although we can't see you all, but great to be here. I might have confused the issue by putting QIA services. Some of you may know our parent company was called M Assessment Services, and we recently completed an MBO, which is great for us. But I thought I actually might start introducing our new brand, which is Quality International Assessment Services. I'm going to tell you a bit about that. We own Quality in Tourism, and because Sarah's here, we'll split what we talk about so we don't repeat each other. But yeah, I mean, as a business, we are a professional assessment service. We run verification schemes and contracts for various different businesses and in different countries and different sectors. We do verification of higher education for the MOD for their enhanced learning credits program. We do a customer service excellence program, which is with the Cabinet Office, and that's really public sector and third sector businesses. We've obviously got our tourism and travel arm, which I think that's our passion, isn't it, Sarah? Because we both come from the industry. I used to be a hotel general manager. And yeah, I mean, it's great to be here, and it's great to have this topic of conversation. I'm thrilled to be here, and let's see what comes up. I'll pass you over to Merrily.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Wonderful to be here as well. Obviously, Richard, you and I met years ago, and in many ways, the Short-Term Accommodation Association, the industry body for the short-term rental and holiday rental sector, it sits kind of parallel to service departments and that whole space. But I think as we look forward, the more that we can do to collaborate across the different associations and different organizations, the better. And I think when we come to topics like accreditation, there's so much we can learn from each other, and actually so much that we have in common. I would say it's 99% the same and only small differences. And I think that's actually really encouraging, because as our sector grows, there are just more and more touch points and companies that work across both segments, etc. So it's great to be here and great to have these conversations. Probably worth mentioning that I wear a couple of different hats. So I'm the chairperson for the Short-Term Accommodation Association. So I will often be speaking with an industry perspective, particularly around accreditation. I also am the CEO and founder of Under the Doormat. So when I wear that hat, I can actually talk about how we've gone through as a company, getting accredited, the value of it, and those sorts of things. And finally, there is another program that actually came out of the crisis last year called Trusted Stays. Some of you may have heard of the NHS Homes program, where companies from across the industries came together and offered free accommodation for NHS workers. We actually had more than 30 companies across the UK having more than 1,500 properties and donating more than £20 million of free stays for NHS workers, which is a great charitable initiative. But what's even more exciting about it is that government recognized off the back of that the value of our sector and started to get their head around the fact that service departments, short-term rentals, that there is a professional segment of the market and it's not all peer-to-peer. And with the backing of the accreditation scheme that was set up and backed by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, we were able to set up this industry-wide platform to help short-term rental providers who are professional access corporate and government bookings. And back in February, we were the first organization in our sector to win a government RFP. And we're in the process now of building into the GDS system so that lots of smaller professional providers can come under one umbrella and access, the walled garden that was often exclusive to hotels and obviously some of the larger service department companies in the past. So I guess that's another area, because to be able to have trusted stays exist, we had to have accreditation as a proof point. And we'll come on to that a little bit later, but I think it's a great example of where accreditation has a role to play in commercial business models and opportunities for companies in our sector, particularly in terms of counter-cyclical bookings and recovery coming out of the pandemic.
Great, thank you, Marilee. Could I just ask at this stage, just briefly, because it might not come up, but the award or for the entrepreneur, the pivoting, I noticed something on LinkedIn earlier on.
Oh, yeah.
What was that, please?
Yeah, so we've been nominated and shortlisted for the Great British Entrepreneur Awards for the Pivot Award, which was for the Trusted Stays initiative, which came out of the pandemic last year. So really excited to be shortlisted for that, and we'll have our fingers crossed in September for that award, which is exciting.
Congratulations, and we'll cross our fingers too. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Marilee. Sarah, if I may pass over the mic to yourself.
Hello, thank you, Richard. So my name's Sarah. Most of you would have known me from Saba, week in, week out, laughing at Richard's jokes. Bless him. So Deborah sort of mentioned earlier on, so I work alongside the quality and tourism and quality and travel sector of the arm. So I work the assessor team, and I have to say I'm quite new to the business, about 14 months in now. But it has been an absolute amazing experience. The accreditations that we teach, we look after, we mentor, it's just fascinating. And I think that has been really good. So we've taken people through the safe, clean and legal, so we've helped them when they've woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a cold sweat with a question. We're there for them, we can talk them through it. The REST accreditation, which is the Responsible, Ethical, Sustainable Tourism Travel award that we're doing, fascinating. I'm going through through that with Toby at the moment, and it is absolutely brilliant. So when people talk about accreditations, I think we are very different, because I think it is the passion and the knowledge that we have that sat behind us when we want to deliver these accreditations, and I absolutely love it. I think it's wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it must be very fulfilling as well, because it's such an important aspect, not only for the guests but for the operators, so for everyone really. But you know, that will come up, I'm sure, in our discussions. Thanks, thank you, Sarah. Toby, if I could pass over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Richard, and thank you for having me on. So I work for Silverdor Apartments, which is a service department agency specializing in corporate travel. My role is the quality assurance and compliance officer. So we work alongside quality and tourism and various other accreditation bodies, which I'm sure we'll go into some more detail later. But my role really is to ensure that Silverdor has the highest level of duty of care possible on a global scale to our corporate clients. My role is also obviously looking at the health and safety frameworks that we work with, look at the minimum standards of who we work with, and trying to implement methods, as I said before, on a global level for our thousands of operators around the world to make sure their standards are as high as possible. Silverdor has offices all around the world in 5 different countries. I think Singapore, Denver, Colorado, Lancaster, London, and then a tech office in India as well. So truly a global company and doing what we can to improve the standards in the industry.
Perfect. Thank you, Toby. As a fellow Northerner, I think I'm allowed to make a joke about what time zone Lancaster are in. So without any offence to Northern cousins. Right. So no, thank you everybody for that. So Deborah, if I could perhaps come back to yourself, please, to ask you to describe the broader assessment services that you referred to in your introduction, and whether they apply, whether those accreditation services apply to the service department sector, but also other sectors, perhaps, so that we can just get an overall idea.
Sure, no worries. So some of you may know our history. We used to run the Visit England outsourced accreditation scheme until 2017. And I think it's fair to say that my experience in that time was the product was a little dated. So we came out of that relationship and actually reinvented ourselves and looked at the accreditation schemes we offered, which do include star ratings. We can do quality gradings. In fact, we divide our gradings between what we call compliance, responsible, and quality. Compliance will mean safe and legal, safe, clean and legal, and then we've got an advanced safe, clean and legal, which is kind of focused on hotels or things like leisure clubs where there's an awful lot of health and safety that is a lot more intense, a lot more potential corporate manslaughter cases, can I say? And then the responsible bit, which is the bit that Sarah's mentioned, both Merrily and Toby as businesses, they've gone through it. And the responsible bit is REST, which is our responsible, ethical, sustainable tourism or travel. Just pulling out, recognizing that business travel likes to be named slightly different to the leisure side of the world. Then we've got something called Wellbe Me, which is about wellbeing and mental health. That's really focused on big businesses and supporting staff members, actually, in the most part, for them to in turn support guests that may have issues. We've got a scheme called Fair, which is about food, so it's about authentic and how you procure and all of that sort of stuff. And then finally, we've got an access scheme looking at equality and those sorts of things. And our last section, but not least, is the old school quality bit. It does include star ratings, and we recognise that in lots of cases, going back to what I said about Visit England, that star ratings are out of date, mainly because when it's been managed by public sector, they don't get the investment and the modernisation that they should possibly get. But we do recognise they have their place, and we have lots of customers that really still like to be star rated. And I guess it depends on whether your consumers are in that whole digital frame of mind or the analog side, which is more my age group. But yeah, so it's kind of it's there, it's available for people if they want. Lots of people think the sustainable piece is now the new route to quality. And just going back to the sectors, Richard, we run these schemes not just for service apartments. We run them for short-term lets. We run them for self-caterers. We run them for hotels. We run them for attractions. We do agencies. We literally work the full scale of hospitality, tourism, and travel But not only that, we're sort of recognizing and moving into the areas where the lines are really blurred, given the nature of the way hospitality has moved on. So I was thinking about more long-term rentals, so build-to-rent type properties. We've looked at working with retirement homes and retirement living villages, and also student accommodation. That's going to be a hard one to crack with houses of multiple occupancy, but actually the halls and things. If you talk to a university and how they try and sell their halls, I mean, they see putting their property on booking.com as something not short of revolutionary. So we see our role as there to help any of those people. They can choose what accreditation they want to do. Safe, clean and legal is our minimum standard. So it's the fundamental piece that we put at the bottom of it, because clearly a consumer needs to be safe and things need to be legal, and it should definitely be clean, given what we've just gone through.
Yeah, and does make me smile a little when you're talking of students' accommodation. I think we've got 2 ticks out of the 3 there, but I'm not sure about the clean bit. So yeah, we'll see. And apologies for that joke, Sarah. So do I understand it correctly then that REST is specific to the corporate market?
No, very much works for the leisure market as well. So these accreditations are multi-purpose, and they're slightly adapted to be able to work across all the sectors and with the different appeals to corporate or leisure or whatever purpose a consumer might be buying it.
Right. Interesting. And you work with associations, so HBAA.
Yeah, so the HBAA recommend us, and various others. So obviously we've got a partnership with Silverdor. We work with Situ. We've got various relationships across the board and customers. I mean, Best Western Hotels use us, but actually we're the preferred partner of the STAA, which nicely switches me right over to Merrill East.
Let me get the right. Yeah.
That way. Which way?
Yeah, exactly. Over to you, Merrill, if you could tell us about the STAA, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. So the Short-Term Accommodation Association was set up now about 5 years ago. So we're still young as an association, but we represent all the major platforms or kind of large companies within our sector. So the Airbnbs, the Expedia, Verbos, etc. We represent a lot of operators in the short-term rental space. So the likes of One Fine Stay, My Company Under the Doormat, Vive, and larger holiday homes companies like Sykes Cottages. So a kind of mix of everyone. We also have individual hosts who are members, or kind of small property managers across the country. And then we also have suppliers to the industry. So technology suppliers, everything from linen suppliers to insurance and all the other kinds of things for the industry. So our goal is to really represent the whole industry. We work often with government on the regulation of the sector. And our goal is to promote the responsible growth of our sector. Obviously, our sector's in the press a lot. It can sometimes be one of these things where, people love it or hate it. And I think our goal is really to be that, that association that helps the companies in the sector know how to grow responsibly. And that's why things like having an accreditation scheme, which was developed specifically to roll out in our sector, was so critical. And we went through a whole tendering process and chose Quality in Tourism as our partner because we felt that they were the most able to deliver for us. And off the back of that partnership, we also got the backing of the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and broad support even from some of the detractors of our industry that accreditation is the right thing to do, that the more that we can demonstrate that we're meeting the legal requirements, taking that duty of care seriously, that actually the more opportunities there will be for our sector. And I think things like trusted stays and winning government RFPs are pretty revolutionary for a sector which is not that old and has traditionally been seen as unregulated with no sets of standards. And I think what we're trying to do is help our sector come out of that kind of gray area and actually into a very black and white place where everybody is clear on what rules need to be followed. You know, I think many times people say that there are no regulations in our sector, and that's actually a joke. We post on the Short-Term Accommodation Association website all of the policies and regulations that apply to our sector, and it's a very long list. But it's all about how they're implemented. And I think accreditation is a great way for companies and individual hosts to demonstrate that they are a responsible player and that they do meet all the standards that they should. And I think that will open up new opportunities for the sector.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Marilee. And you mentioned there regarding media, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen you on the BBC. I think the STA has done a great job there. I'd like to come back to you with a couple of points in a little while. If I could perhaps move on to Sarah and Toby, because together I believe that then you're working together to with the implementation of, not the implementation, because it's may I ask Toby, when did Salvador do that research? I think I'm right in saying it took about 18 months. You did incredibly in-depth research and then started working with quality in tourism and I believe common sense compliance. Is that right?
Yeah, no, correct. So over the last 3.5 years or so, really, we started a project looking at exactly what Salvador could do to improve the standards of our operators, you know, what we could recommend, you know, how do we measure that on an internal basis in terms of minimum standards, obviously on a global level, which I'm sure everyone is aware is quite a tricky thing with regulations being so different around the world. But yeah, as I said, it was a lot of research and looking at what available accreditations were out there. So it took quite a process several years ago in terms of RFIs and getting information based off exactly what our clients were demanding, but also what was the legislation in locations. And, you know, we're proud to be working alongside Quality in Tourism and recommending their Safe, Clean, Legal accreditation. As they said, you know, it's above and, well, it needs to be the baseline. In terms of star ratings, they look great and a lot of people appreciate them, but we understand that as a minimum standard, there needs to be something in place that covers all of the legal aspects of it. So
thank you, Toby. A very interesting point, I think, there with global, and if later on, if I may, I'd like to pull a few of you together to ask that question regarding the global kind of perspective on accreditation. And Sarah, then you am I right in saying that you are actually frequently, apart from the on the administrative side, in terms of the program and implementing the program, but you also are on the front line going out and seeing the properties? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so we do a lot of so I've been allowed out now, so I have done some physical visits, which has been absolutely fascinating, but also a lot of the time it will be a virtual assessment like we're doing now. So and it is absolutely fascinating, and I think, you know, to go along with Toby's point of view is the fact that we asked for a risk assessment at a minimum. You know, we asked for we asked for some documentation before that even, so that comes through. We desktop that, we have a look at it. If there are any issues, we're either get on the phone and speak to somebody and speak them through it if they've got any problems understanding what they need to, information they need to provide to us, or if there's anything that they're not sure about in their risk assessment, then they can pick up the phone and speak to us. Sorry, Rich.
Right. No, you go ahead.
So it's very much a two-way conversation that we're having with them. You know, we offer up a lot of good practice. We offer up some support for them. But you know, we have to ensure that those standards are met, to ensure that we're working well with the likes of Toby and Marilee. But yeah, when we go out, so Deborah and I have done a couple of virtual assessments together. One was in America, which was fascinating when we very first did it. But it's amazing how you can look around a property. And sort of, we get into nooks and crannies, we get into showers, we get behind toilets. We do all of that to ensure that the cleaning standards are where they should be. Yes, but also when I went out And in person, we sort of walk around and follow the customer journey, looking at all the compliance as we walk around.
You know, if I were an operator, how long does that process take? So I want to apply for safe, clean, legal, quality and tourism. I contact you. How long does that process take?
It takes as long as you can get fill out your paperwork and fill it back into us, get it into our portal. We then do the desktop. If there's any questions, we will ask you and call you back. And then we will organise an assessment meeting. So it can be done as quickly as a couple of weeks, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
I have actually done it with somebody in 1 week.
Really?
A gentleman that was on holiday down in Cornwall, the poop deck he owns, and it was just like, I'm down here on this specific time. This is what I need to do to get there. So we worked backwards. So we did it in 1 week.
So that's amazing. And let's say that I had a 10-unit apartment, a block with 10 units. Roughly the cost of that. How does that work? Just to give the viewers an idea of what we're talking about. Do you do it according to units?
I'd have to ask Deborah. I think we do.
I get the job of the commercials, Richard. Funnily enough, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I tell you, yes, we can do individual properties, as Mary-Lee said. So you can do individual hosts, we do company level, and we can do a product level. When we would see say 10 bedroom, we would look at 10 bedroom, 10 unit. We would look at, depending on whether they were same or different to each other, we would review percentage of them. And I would say, assuming that they were fairly much the same, you're probably looking around £350. But it's not extortionate. A 2-bedroomed apartment starts from around 125. So we've kept it so it's really reasonable and achievable for people.
Amazing. Wow. And Mary-Lee, am I right in understanding that Trusted Stays, so you're an accredited company, isn't that correct?
Yeah, so basically with Trusted Stays, because it's an industry platform that helps professional operators access corporate and government bookings, it's a prerequisite for any partner who wants to be on Trusted Stays to get accredited. So obviously what that means is that when we're selling into government through the government RFP that we won, or indeed into the GDS world, that we're able to say that every partner who is on that platform has met those accreditation standards. And so I think that's actually, for us, it's really important, because that was the only way we could win the government RFP, was to have that demonstrable independent third-party inspection to make sure that all the requirements are being met. So, there are all kinds of companies, more than 100 companies who have applied to be part of Trusted Stays. And a part of that onboarding process is making sure that they do have that accreditation before they start taking bookings.
Right, that's amazing. And that then helps. So then agents will book these properties through your platform. Is that right?
Yeah, so they can book them through Trusted Stays, or indeed through, the government has its RFP process and actually books via the GDS, and also other companies can book via the GDS. So it's a platform, so you can go on to trustedstays.co.uk and actually, if you're a corporate, you can book on there. We have had NHS workers booking on that platform, etc. But then also it is connected to the GDS world. And therefore there are lots of travel agents, corporates, government, etc., that are able to book properties that are in Trusted Stays through the GDS system as well. So it's kind of a combination, but ultimately it's a platform for those professional operators. And the idea was, government said to us, look, well, globally, I think there's about 140,000 property managers in our sector. And they were like, look, if we're going to work with you, you've got to bring together all those professional operators, and you've got to show us that they're meeting all the requirements. And so that's why we brought it under the Trusted Stays brand. And any professional operator, that can be a service department company, it can be a short-term rental company, a host, anyone can be a part of Trusted Stays if they meet those requirements and have that accreditation and have the availability to for the properties that they want to put on the platform to make sense for those types of bookings.
Fantastic, thank you. And Toby, then that has meant that you would also then work with trusted stays, is that correct?
I mean, as of yet, I mean, we're working with Under the Doormat, correct? But in terms of trusted stays, not yet.
Oh, Under the Doormat. And Under the Doormat is, if you say, maybe if you explain that one there, Toby, please, the Under the Doormat.
Oh, they're just
Mary's.
So Under the Doormat, we've got a portfolio of around 300 properties across London. We also run an apart hotel for Cadogan Estates, 3 Sloane Gardens. And so some of our properties are in Silver Door. So Silver Door is one of our channels to market, which is a fantastic way for us to focus on the corporate market. And especially now we're working more and more with build to rent providers who have units that they're looking to have on the short-term rental market for different periods of time. And so very, very suitable for that corporate market. And because of the professional operation that we have and the quality and tourism accreditation that the Under the Doormat, business has, that allows us to work with partners like Silver Door and, to work through trusted stays with government and others so that people can have that, that confidence in the duty of care that the apartments that we manage, even though they may be individual apartments, actually they all meet the minimum standards that are required for that corporate market.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Richard.
No, you go ahead, Toby, please.
Part of what I do is looking at the data that we collect in terms of accreditations, in terms of the operators, in terms of what they do, in terms of health and safety and compliance, and how do we use that data to make sure that we are booking the safest, the most compliant properties and apartments possible. So that is all about feeding it through to the client team and educating in terms of, what are they looking for? So they have the option to fill out the accreditations within our systems. So then it pulls through to the client team, because normally they'll recommend 3 or 4 different apartments for a location based off, obviously, a lot of different variables in terms of what they want. But we're trying to put more weight on the health and safety and compliance side of it. And obviously a massive aspect of that is third-party accreditation. So yeah, it's becoming more and more weighted within our systems and in terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis, because it's becoming more and more important, obviously, from the client side of things as well and what they require.
Yeah, indeed.
Can I just add there, Richard? We've had bookings go into some of our leisure properties. So some of the self-caterings we've had from doctors looking at Merrilees, looking for the accreditation because of the trusted stay. So they're booking their holidays because of the safe, clean and legal, because they've seen it on trusted stays and they're using it. So not only is that driving business into the corporate world, it's then coming back to the leisure side of things as well, which is great.
That's perfect when that reassurance goes round in a circle, isn't it? And then we're a positive cycle. So that's fantastic. Yeah. I do want to ask you about the global aspect, but I want to pop in a question here. And Mike Stapley, thanks, Mike, for that. Are there too many accreditation providers for SAs, so for serviced accommodation providers? Can the client see the wood for the trees? So there are perhaps, Toby, would that be a question for you perhaps, do you think? So there are other, or anybody who would care to answer in all honesty. So other accreditation providers. You recommend 2, we work with several, that's correct, isn't it?
But so obviously we did our homework in terms of choosing the accreditation providers that we recognize and recommend. Obviously, there's more out there in terms of tourism boards that offer serviced apartment level accreditations around the world. There is a lot out there, but specifically, obviously, for the serviced apartment sector. And we've done our due diligence and kind of come up with a list of what we recommend, because that's what we're comfortable with and we know them. Obviously, that list can change in the future, and we'll kind of keep objectively looking at it. But, for now, we think we've recommended a good amount of accreditations that we work with and that we recognize, because we know those standards.
Yeah, and actually, I might jump in here because I think this segues a little bit into the global conversation, to be honest. So when we took a look as the Short-Term Accommodation Association and chose Quality in Tourism, we did our own RFP, did our due diligence, and chose a single partner. And that's been a great partnership for us and something that, you know, has worked really, really well. And I think, you know, more and more what we're seeing is people wanting to get that accreditation because it also helps us when we talk to government regulators about the future regulation of the sector and everything, that we get the majority of providers accredited. So I think there's a bigger picture. Some of it is about consumers. The other part is about, you know, our industry taking responsibility ourselves for demonstrating we're meeting standards, and then how that influences discussions with governments. Now, the other side of that coin is, of course, the platforms, because, you know, all of us use different distribution channels. And so one of the big challenges that we've recognized as associations is that unless we get the Expedias, the Booking.coms, the Airbnbs, and all of these platforms to actually recognize accreditation in the way that Silverdoor has, actually very admirably, then it's going to be very difficult for people to know what accreditation to get and everything else. So we're working with the Vacation Rental Management Association, which is the industry body in North America, the European Holiday Homes Association, around how we can actually have one global standard. And the idea is then we'll work with HEDNA, which is the industry body for the platforms, so that actually they can have a tick box, just in the same way that cleaning standards became a tick box during COVID, that actually we'll be able to have accreditation and we'll be able to be clear, similar to the model really that Silverdoor has done, that there are certain standards that any accreditation scheme must meet. And there may be different providers who can all meet that standard. But I think we're in a world where in 6 months to a year, we're probably going to have a lot more clarity. So to Mike's question, we can help clients see the wood from the trees and know, look, as long as I've got one of these 3 or one of these 5 accreditations, then I know I've got an accreditation which meets the requirements of the platforms, of the industry bodies, wherever it is that I'm operating around the world. And I think that's going to be hugely powerful. I think, you know, the good news for everyone on this call is that, you know, in a lot of those discussions, the model that we've established here in the UK with Quality in Tourism is seen as best practice. So I think, you know, it's likely that that will be one of the models that we see as part of this global umbrella. So hopefully that gives people a little bit of confidence. If you go down that route, you're likely to see that that will be something that has some longevity.
Right. And you mentioned there a number of accreditation kind of
I mean, the really industry associations. And I think one thing that's really important is that industry associations should not be the people that are doing accreditation. It's really important that we have separate, independent, third-party accreditation. And that's why we chose to partner with Quality in Tourism, and STA doesn't do accreditation ourselves. The last thing you want as an industry association is members calling you up and saying, oh, you've got to accredit me, you know, otherwise I'm not going to be a member anymore. You know, we absolutely must have separation and avoidance of that conflict of interest. And I think across the associations that I mentioned, we all agree and see that as important. We also agree that, you know, there isn't going to be one provider that can be the accreditation body for everywhere in the world, but we will set the requirements of what types of accreditation will be accepted so that various companies can be the leading providers of that accreditation around the world.
So would that then mean, sorry, Deborah, you go ahead, Deborah.
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things. There is, to Mike's question, there is an industry body within serviced accommodation called SEFA that are looking to do something, and I keep pulling them to try, and I keep saying we need to get together with the STAA and everybody else that's doing it. And I think, but there are specific operators, Mike, for service departments. There are ones that do whole industries like we do. And I think, Merrily, it's probably fair to say that what you liked about that was the learning opportunity from what the traditional side of the industry did, and actually how we could share our experiences and collaborate. And I think
absolutely. And I think one of the things we saw in the process when we started it, we expected that we'd kind of have to rewrite the whole rule book. And actually, what we found is that probably 95% of what you would accredit in a traditional service department or traditional self-catering was exactly the same for short-term rentals. And it was actually only about 5% which needed to be customized. And I think that was a learning for all of us, actually, that it's not as different as people sometimes perceive. And even we thought that it might be more different than it was when we actually got down to the nuts and bolts of it. But I think, you know, as a company, the thing we found was it was like a consulting process. So I think everybody thinks, oh my God, it's an audit. This is a problem. Like, oh my God, this is such a big thing. We've got to set aside all this time and it's scary. Actually, it was quite the opposite. I mean, it was the cheapest and best consulting that I've ever been able to purchase for my team, because these guys come in. It's not me as their boss saying, guys, you need to improve cleaning standards. Guys, you need to close this gap in the way that we record our gas safety certificates. It was these guys saying, look, to get accredited, here's the things you need to improve on. But by the way, you already meet safe, clean, and legal standards. But if you want to be benchmarking yourself against the best hotels or the best service departments in London, here's some things that you might want to think about, or some things you could learn or improve on. I mean, you know, for the amount of money that you pay to get accredited, that advice is like gold dust. And for me, that's actually the best reason to go through it.
Fabulous. Thank you. Deborah, there you mentioned SAFA. So SAFA, SAFFAA, I think it is. SAFA.
It is. Yeah. And don't ask me what it stands for.
No, Forum, service accommodation, I think, Forum for. But it's a really worthwhile project to try to then bring accreditation bodies together, so that they then, as Merrily was describing there, really, if I've understood it correctly, that one accreditation, if we can then bring those levels the same, then one accreditation can be, potential clients in the States can look and see a certain accreditation, which is not necessarily one that was made in the States, but it is a parallel to one that exists in the States, and therefore we've got kind of global reassurance. Is that right, roughly?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, as an accreditation assessment company, we have to be the best we can be, and to compete. That's all it is. And I think if we have, as Merrily said, is there's sort of a minimum level that anybody to get into that recognised accreditation have to do, then we all go off and do then our nuances of other things we offer, like we were talking about with REST and things like that. It's about how you specialise and how you approach it. I think Merrily just did the best PR on us in terms of the way we like to describe ourselves. So we've moved a long way from inspectorate. That's absolutely our objective, that we're that helping hand that helps people achieve rather than fail. It is about business improvement, and it is about helping people continuously improve, and also sharing. We're like a conduit of best practice, because we always talk about the assessors seeing 300 to 500 properties a year, not this year, but normally, and their job is to share best practice to help people improve their business. It's a professional improvement for us.
Yeah. Fantastic. Mike, thank you for that question. Toby, yeah.
I was just going to continue and say, obviously, we're going through the REST accreditation at the moment. And as they said, it's, what are you doing now, but it's also what can you be doing in the future? It's that continuous improvement as a business to not only look at, what can we immediately change, but, how can we plan to better ourselves and position ourselves better as a company within the industry? It's that competitive advantage that you gain from it. So yeah, as Merrily said, it's a cheap consultation session in that sense. So
How did you do that, Toby? Are you reading my notes? That's exactly what I was going to say next.
Can I just add something?
Sorry, yeah.
The brilliant thing about working with Toby as well is it's very analytical, but it's also, as I say, what can be done with the community and charity, etc. But actually, what we found was there's a massive opportunity for an education piece as well throughout the rest. And I think that is one of the major things that came out of it, wasn't it, Toby, as well, is that through your social media, you know, and your blogs and your posts, etc. And, you know, you're in this amazing situation where you can just do a massive education piece to all concerned. So that has been really interesting to look at as well.
No, yeah, it's not only to talk about it and stimulate discussion in the industry, it's to get action on it and to encourage our operators based off what our clients want to actually have it as part of the industry's DNA in terms of sustainability rather than just a discussion topic. So
honestly, there's so much to discuss, isn't there? You mentioned the sustainability there, and then as Deborah mentioned, well-being earlier on. We could be all day, couldn't we? But kickoff's at 8 o'clock, so we're limited. You know, it's fascinating. Sarah, you also mentioned there with charity, and Jamie, if you're on the call, Jamie Masler, then please put something in comments, and then you can post some links. But I'm going to be posting the links. I'm going to show a display at this stage, something completely different from this discussion, but I think it's very worthwhile because let me just do this. It's a charity that it's a fundraising exercise that is happening later on today, 9 o'clock London time, 4 p.m. EST. And it's to support, it's to support young girls in Sierra Leone. There is an effort. There are efforts to create an orphanage for these young girls who really are need a lot of support. Jamie would be able to give you more information if you would like to attend Sabah tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Then he'll be able to tell you more about the actual fundraising. But there is Love and Reload is a webcast that takes place pretty much daily, and this evening, 9 o'clock London time, it's a fundraising event online. I will post the links there, and if you can support in any way, either donations or spreading the word, then that's great. Although the event takes place this evening, the efforts will continue, obviously, beyond. And all credit to Jamie for starting that, and to Ben Cross of Love and Reload and Glomo for publicising it. So I'll leave the ticker going there in case anybody wants to make a note of those links. And I'll go on to the comments there just in case Jamie comes along. Yeah, what I'm wondering is what's changing in this world, not just COVID, of course, and whether that's changed accreditation, but whether our younger guests and younger organisers, is it age? Is there any age kind of thing there where people are looking for more reassurance because perhaps the regulation within short-term accommodation is not as it may, you know, in an ideal world? We touched on regulation there as well, of course. But what's changing in the world of accreditation? Is that question too open?
No, I mean, look, I'm happy to jump in on what we're seeing. I mean, certainly, if we take a look up in Scotland, we see that government is looking at regulating the sector with a licensing scheme. The government in England is consulting on a registration scheme for accommodation. And I think, we don't have to look very far. Governments all across Europe and all across the world are looking at how to regulate the sector moving forward. I think there's two approaches to doing that. Some governments take the approach of, we want to control it, and therefore it's put in place licensing schemes and all these types of things. But then they tend not to be very effective because they're very rigid. They're not flexible to kind of adapt. And therefore, often what it does is potentially constrain the market in some cases, but in many other cases, what it does is almost end up with two markets, a market which is regulated and potentially constrained. And then you get people trying to go around the rules and do things in different ways. Because I think whether we like it or not, with the advent of Airbnb and the boom in peer-to-peer accommodation, the cat's out of the bag. Trying to constrain it is like, looking back 10 years and saying, oh, we're going to stop online shopping because actually we want to protect the retailers. Well, look, COVID's accelerated that. And in the same way, COVID has accelerated people's perception, rightly or wrongly, that staying in an individual property is actually safer than staying in a big hotel. Because the idea is that you've got your own self-contained accommodation. You can cook your own meals if you want to. You're not going down to a buffet breakfast, all these kinds of things. So STR, interestingly, they obviously do all the benchmarking for the industry. They do hotels. They've been doing a service department pilot in London. And we've also, as an industry, been working with them on short-term rentals and the pilot for that side. And I think what's great is we're starting to get more and more data about how that's evolving. So I think what we're seeing is that customer perceptions are changing. Governments, on the one hand, are trying to regulate this. And I actually see accreditation as an important part of the industry strategy. We need to be out there and ahead of governments in demonstrating that all the standards are met. Because if we can do that, we're not going to find ourselves with burdensome, inflexible, and expensive licensing schemes, which are potentially detrimental to everyone, both to consumers, to the industry, to everyone. But if we don't get ahead and show that we can lead with accreditation, then government will feel the need to come in and regulate, probably with a much heavier hand. And so I think that as an industry, we've just got to get our head around that. And you ask the question, why should people do this? Well, you should do it because you want to be in an industry that's demonstrating you're responsible to consumers, to government, to everyone. Because if all of us do it, then we're much more likely to have a much bigger market to play in and companies that are all far more successful than if we wait around for someone else to tell us how we've got to operate.
Fascinating. So, and licensing and regulation are likely to be more expensive as well. Yeah.
Well, expensive, and they're not going to come and consult you on how to improve your business. They're going to come with their tick box and go, oh, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong. We're going to shut you down. You've got to prove this. It is an audit when it's a government licensing scheme. Yeah, I personally would much prefer to have people who are consulting us to improve our business and helping us to make sure that we are meeting the standards we need to meet. But also that the scheme can adapt over time. If in a couple of years we learn that there's some environmental things that are really important, we don't need to wait for government to regulate for that. We can actually proactively have new accreditations or adapted ones. I mean, last year when the new cleaning standards got adopted by the industry, that was immediately implemented as part of the quality and tourism assessments. So the ability to do things well and quickly is far better when we've got private organizations that can lead the way, rather than trying to have government regulators and people like that telling us how to run our industry.
Yeah, interesting. Couple of questions really. We've seen over the past year a lot more focus from my own perspective, at least, on the contractor market. To some extent, it may it may even be said that it has allowed the sector to survive to some extent when corporates aren't getting on planes and trains, and when the leisure market isn't necessarily traveling, apart from the famous staycations that happen. So the contractor market, is there anything in that market which makes the accreditation different, do you think? And so will the demand, will what contractors are looking for, will that be that it's clearly different to what corporates are looking for, both in terms of the format of the accommodation and the price and everything? But are there any moves for a contractor accreditation, or is that something that's not yet there, but in the pipeline perhaps?
That's an interesting one. I would suspect Safe, Clean, Legal would need to underwrite anything that obviously, because it's about the health and safety and it's about consumer protection. And I'd just like to qualify that we're not about checking people are paying their tax. Our job is to make sure that our job is to make sure that actually it's about health and safety for consumers. So it's life and limb stuff. It's not down to the tiniest little bit of detail. And we've agreed that as part of our primary authority status with Cornwall Council. Just briefly, what that means is they check what we do. So we have somebody that actually audits us, and they are doing tick box exercises merrily. It's a proper audit, Sarah will tell you. But contractor-wise, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, the company we've just bought our company from is predominantly a utilities company and do lots of contracting. And we for a long time said that actually that their only option around corporate hotels and stuff like that, because of the way they could book it in the past, it was really just not what they wanted. I think it's a huge opportunity for service departments, for Merrilee's world, the short stay rentals, and what they need is a home from home. So actually they're not looking for 5-star luxury necessarily. They are looking for something well priced, well maintained, clean, obviously, and comfortable. And it's such an opportunity for you guys. It really is. And actually, from our perspective, all they need is Safe, Clean and Legal. There will be insurance implications as part of their contracts. Everybody's looking at their duty of care. Everybody's looking at the corporate manslaughter stuff. So accreditation can only help you in that sense.
Right. Thank you. Seth from Situ. Thanks for your question, Seth. There are a couple of questions here. May I just ask the panel, though, at this stage, because it's 3 minutes to, do you have any appointments that you need to do? Are you okay for 5 to 10 minutes more?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, thanks. How can I, Seth is asking, how can I assure my clients that an operator who was accredited yesterday is still delivering tomorrow? Anybody want?
I'll just, sorry. So hi, Seth, thank you for that. So how, because we have a rolling accreditation program, I can't speak for anybody else, I don't know how they work, but when Sarah talked about our gas certificate, our insurance, those sorts of things, they upload that documentation to us. We put it in a system and it gets a chase system. So even if we came and looked at your property 3 months ago, we checked all of your safety standards in terms of the accreditation. We have a rolling program. So if your insurance has run out, we will send reminders, and actually your accreditation drops off if you don't give us those updates on your insurance certificates and stuff like that. So that's how we do it. We also are using tech to check customer feedback, which obviously is a good indicator if some things are going wrong. And finally, we're working with a software company, because we sort of see ourselves as partially software, partially soft skills, to actually be able to gather that data and scrape not just performance stuff in terms of customer feedback, but scrape performance in terms of competitor stuff. So we'll be launching that towards the end of the year, which is really exciting for us.
That's very interesting, because I suspected that Toby was reading my notes early on, and I will now refer to Seth's second question and wonder whether technology playing a part. Are we all psychic here? So is technology playing a part in site visits? That is, are virtual inspections a good option? How have you found that with regard to the virtual inspections rather than actually getting there into the bathroom, as Sarah was describing earlier?
Sarah, do you want to answer that? Because the Dallas one, actually, Merrily, this is the chap that you introduced us to in the States that's Rent Responsibly. David, we saw his places in Dallas. Yeah. So Sarah, I'll let you explain, because I was really anti it, but it really worked. But I'll let you explain.
It was absolutely, it has its place. That's what I would say. At the moment, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to help so many people go through the accreditation. Everything would have had to have stopped. So, Deborah and I, did the whole, what can we do? What can we do? Can we do the virtuals? What does it look like? How would it work? And we did. We played around with it, and it has been incredibly successful. We can. The detail, the main thing really is be prepared and prepare your the person you're going to do the accreditation with. So do they have the smartphone? Have they got the appointment ready? Do they know the technology? How is it going to work? So it's all about preparation with your guest, and actually just tell them what you're going to do. And as I say, we just walk through. We follow the customer journey right the way through, and ad hoc I will just say, oh, can we nip into the kitchen? When we're in the kitchen, can you open the fridge? Can you show me the seals in your fridge, please? Can we look at the top of the microwave? My favorite one, isn't it, Deborah? Sorry, it's the top of the microwave. And I've got people into the showers, so I can look at the shower heads and the mold, if there's any mold, and etc. So and actually, I think people find it less intimidating because we're not actually stood in front of them. And I've had a lady with her granddaughter with her. I've had a GM of a hotel do it, and everyone has found it incredibly helpful. We will definitely sort of spot check them, absolutely. But from the what we've seen and the detail that we can look into, it's been really, really helpful for the business.
We actually, no, definitely, yeah. And I was very cynical about it, because it was our real strong point is that we visit everywhere. But actually, going back to Toby, we did some of your NK apartments in India, which were an absolute revelation. It was brilliant, wasn't it, Sarah? It was, yeah. And obviously, we're not going to visit India right now, but yeah.
But they loved it. They thought it was absolutely fantastic. And the really lovely things about looking around their apartments, they were really proud of them. They wanted to show. By the end of it, I was just like, can we show you another room? Can we show you another room? Can we show you another room? And they were really proud of what they were doing, and how they were doing it. So I think it is something about bringing out and a pride in your product.
Yeah, exactly. So no, that's worked well then over the COVID period. Thanks for that question, Seth. Thank you. Yeah, my favourite place to look is underneath the microwave, actually. So seriously, in the ones that we run. We've passed our time, actually. So I have one question, and then I would like to kind of ask you all if there are any questions I may have missed, or any points that you'd like to make before we kind of close. But one thing, because we're talking here about third-party accreditation rather than self-accreditation or anything else. And I thought that was a really interesting poll you were running on LinkedIn there. And yeah, so the third-party accreditation was obviously preferred by most. And potential clients and guests.
I'm on a webinar. He's running over.
Oh, that's a pretty straight. What's that noise?
Maximum 5 minutes.
What's that? Is someone saying something?
It's Merrily, I think.
No, was it? Oh, I see. Was Merrily saying something? Okay. So, put me off here. So, third-party accreditation, very important. Guests use reviews quite a lot. Are there any plans for third-party reviews, or at least test, accrediting those reviews? Is that anything?
So the system we're working with, I've always been a firm believer that thinking about semantics, so the words that customers use, customers are not always right. I know that's what we're led to believe in hospitality, but they're not always right, and they are not particularly objective. And often I always say, and this is terrible, if a customer says something isn't clean, then it's likely to be filthy, because most customers are used to domestic cleans rather than professional cleans, which I'm generalizing, but actually. This is the tool we're using, is around gathering feedback to help people benchmark themselves. This is a software we're building at the moment. So I think it's an important contributor, because you can't deny that customers' feedback is important to consumers, because it's got to be, hasn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's the way you judge it. But I think it's become more important that the third party bit is there as well. And unfortunately, we're still in a day and age where people manipulate the whole consumer feedback piece.
Yeah, so which means that the accreditation aspect is even more important, because we all like to rely on those reviews, but perhaps if they're not accredited, then yeah. No, thank you for that, Deborah. So we're pretty much at the end, and thank you for remaining over time as such. Are there any particular aspects of accreditation? And we've talked about the licensing and regulation as well. Are there any aspects that I may have missed that you'd like to make a point of? No?
I think it's quickly mentioning from our perspective and the research that we did, how important building level accreditations are. There's quite a lot out there in terms of operator level, desktop checks, etc., which does always, in terms of insurances, risk assessment, it's an important part of it. But to have that complete confidence in the place that we're going to put the clients, that's one of the biggest weights in terms of accreditation for us, is having the building level accreditation. Obviously, that does add additional costs normally with site visits, etc. But we do think that, long term, it is a differentiator, as more and more clients are requesting accredited properties and ones that we've actually vetted through a third party. So,
right. Thanks for that, Toby. Thank you. And any other points anyone would like to make? No. Okay. In which case, tremendous thanks to everybody on the panel. So Deborah, Marilee, Sarah, and Toby, for taking part in this discussion. I think we could have gone on for a long time. I've certainly gone through about half my notes only, so we'll have to come back again. But thank you very much. Thank you for the live viewers and for your questions. Thank you for those who are watching this as a recording. I will now attempt my final avoiding embarrassment with my outro video. So again, thank you very much. We'll see you next week, viewers, on the Blue Room, and thank you this week for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.